What I want to discuss in this video is a conspiracy that becomes reality in front of our eyes. By that, I'm talking about the surveillance state we live in. This video will be practical, and my focus will not be on proving anything, but on informing the audience on surveillance methods. I distinguish between traditional and modern methods, and I will teach you how all of that works behind the scenes and what you should be aware of. What I refer to as traditional surveillance methods are ways to identify a person using his characteristics, their fingerprints, appearance, or voice. Fingerprints used to be the police's most popular way to identify people in the past. Later, with the increasing use of cameras, facial recognition was used more frequently. There are a number of reasons for why facial identification is preferred over fingerprints. Identification using fingerprints requires the subject's fingerprints to exist in a database. If not, you don't have anything to compare your sample with. You could instead keep the sample and hope that it will help you in the future. Facial recognition doesn't require a person to be in your own database. You could instead use social media, or simply ask people for help with identifying an individual.
You familiar with that face?
I don't know. My memory ain't so great.
Oh, yeah? Maybe this will refresh your memory.
Another issue with fingerprints is that it is a lot more difficult to find a match than how it is being portrayed in movies. If you ever had to enter the USA as a foreigner, you probably remember how hard you had to press the machine before your fingers were scanned properly. If you try to unlock your phone using your finger, you know it sometimes makes mistakes and fails to recognize you. In reality, getting a good sample of a fingerprint is hard, and mistakes are common. And on a side note, using your finger to unlock your phone guarantees that the corporation that makes your device has a sample of your fingerprint in their database. What they could do with it, I will leave to your imagination, but I definitely recommend different ways to lock your machine. Fingerprint scanners look for strategic characteristics in fingerprints. They don't compare the entire print, but bits in it. The truth is that 100% match of samples is complete fiction, and convincing people that this method is enough to identify a person beyond any doubt is nothing short of successful propaganda. I want to explain a concept that you might not be aware of, but is crucial for identification methods. The concept I want to introduce is called classification errors. There are two types of these errors: false positives and false negatives. False positive is wrongly identifying a subject that should be rejected. An example would be someone who isn't you unlocking your phone using their finger, or someone who isn't you being filmed committing a crime and you are mistakenly identified as this person. A false negative error is wrongly rejecting a subject that should be accepted. Your phone not accepting your fingerprint when you try to unlock it, or your face not recognized when you are being filmed are two examples of this error. In identification methods, a database is used for purposes of comparison between the data in the database and the subject that requires identification. Classification errors occur because there is no 100% match when it comes to these methods, and there is a trade-off between the first and second types of errors, as one comes on the expense of the other. When you look for identification, you have to set a threshold of match percentage. You would have to decide how many percentages are sufficient to classify a subject. If you wish to have a method to unlock an electronic device, you would most likely prefer a high threshold that will result with more false negatives This may force a user to try logging in a number of times before succeeding, but it will provide better security. If you wish to identify possible suspects who might appear on a video of a crime scene, you could set a low threshold and filter out the false positives later on. This way you will not lose potential true matches. The fact that 100% matches don't exist means that because of the chance of false positive errors in identification, traditional methods such as fingerprint matching and low-quality video footage are usually not enough to convict a person in court. It might be seen as strong evidence, but that alone is not enough. After you understood classification errors, you can understand why a researcher from the University of California claims that 8 out of every 1,000 cases carry false identification of a suspect by their fingerprints. I believe that this number is extremely generous in favor of the method. Apple claims that Touch ID technology has a false positive rate of 0.002%. If we take their word for it, this means the threshold they use should be at least 90% match. Unlike a user trying to unlock their device, the police needs to deal with incomplete samples that were left unintentionally. Setting a high threshold means less samples can be used. Imagine the policeman who is taking your fingerprints being too motivated to gather evidence. He could theoretically set a low threshold for matching samples from a crime scene and argue that a match proves your guilt. The judge who rules your case shouldn't be expected to know the false positive error rate of fingerprint scanners, so he can easily be convinced that this piece of evidence is legit. Classification errors are irrelevant for what I call modern surveillance methods. These methods include a tracker that reports your location at any time. The trackers will normally save the history of your locations, so when someone is granted access to the tracker, they will be able to collect your whereabouts from the tracking device, even from before they could access it. The most common method here is phone tracking. Your device can be used to track you with its software or with its hardware. Software tracking means that a Trojan made its way to your device. This can be in the form of an app you installed, a file you downloaded, or even as part of your device's operating system. All of the above could be used to get access to your device's GPS location, the Wi-Fi network it is connected to, or the cellular towers in its range. Using hardware for phone tracking means that the other party has the ID of your device. IMEI, or International Mobile Equipment Identity, is a number that is used to identify a phone device. This number can be sent to your service provider and they will be able to locate it. If you are hiding and the police has that number, restoring factory settings and using a different SIM card will not be sufficient to avoid tracking. The reason that there are no classification errors in modern surveillance methods is that you are being uniquely identified. Unique identifier means that there is one and only one of you. Your device is associated with you, and if it was located in a place, false identification cannot be used as defense. The modern world made it almost mandatory for us to go everywhere with a smartphone. But what happens when people stop carrying their unique identifier with them? How will the authorities be able to keep track on where we are?
Nanotechnology has been used in various applications for years. Now, certain researchers are looking at its potential in fighting the pandemic. Biochemists at Stanford University are developing a nano-based COVID-19 vaccine. They believe the design can offer a cheap, safe, and effective vaccine, which can remain stable at room temperature.
Nowadays, the option of injecting all of us with nanotechnology exists. This technology can be used to either track us or control us. Unlike a phone device, leaving home without your body is not an option. So since the beginning of the crisis, our governments did everything in their power to insert their technology into our bodies. The chemtrails we breathe, the nose swabs many of us must take to have permission to perform certain actions, And of course, the lethal injections some of us chose to get. All of them may include these nano devices that you didn't ask to have, but are now inside you.
Check this out. See that TV over there?
Yeah?
Okay, if I walk up to it, it's gonna try and connect to it. Watch this.
That's a cow, man. Let me see.
There it is. What? Yeah. Everywhere I get the same message. And
Is it
walk
just
away?
this TV?
Nope. I walk away. Goes away.
Oh my god.
The internet is full of videos of people claiming to be able to connect to networks or have a magnetic field in their body. Some of the videos could be fake, but the idea of your government inserting tracking device into you is not a wild theory, it is just the next step in the evolution of surveillance. The technology is here, and believing that the government is too ethical to run an operation like this is as stupid as one can get.